but I'm also personally fulfilled. And then that bleeds into every other area of life. I mean, so many of my clients, they engage with me because they have a professional challenge or a professional goal. But why they stay with me is because their life changes.
Hey, what's up, guys? Spencer Smith here, host of the Self-Funded with Spencer podcast, sponsored by Pareto Health, ClaimDoc, and PlanSight. Enjoy today's episode. Well, let's get it going, man. Well, I'm here with my good buddy, the masterminder himself, Ryan Miller, performance coach. How you doing, man?
I'm good, buddy. This is good to be back here so quickly.
Well,
I mean, not back here, though.
Back here. Well, this is part of the reason I think we had this conversation in the first place is we didn't get to have you in the main studio the first time around, and I really was kicking myself that we couldn't make the scheduling work for that. So happy that very quickly we got you back in here in the real, true studio.
It worked good. I'm on the orange couch. I'm comfortable.
Infamous / famous. I don't know which one we need to use. Eric was blending into it earlier. We had to make him change his shirt. But
as long as you're only podcasting here, we'll say it's famous.
There's no other type of casting that happens here. Well, so Ryan, other than the all jokes aside, I think there's a couple things we want to cover today. Last episode, for anybody that doesn't know, we covered really your sales acumen. You were part of my 3-part series, the trilogy on sales mastery, and I really appreciate you lending your voice to that because you are a master salesman. But the thing that you really do is obviously coach others to, I would say, maximize their own potential. So very briefly, before we get into the crux of the conversation about the book and coaching, who are you? For the folks that didn't see that previous episode, a little bit of your backstory.
Yeah. So I'll get into more of the personal backstory, I think, when we talk a little bit more around the book. But
sure.
Professionally, what you said, I think, is key into this. When I got into coaching, this was 12 years ago, and I think I shared a little bit of the story last time, but I had this affinity and affection for this corporate trainer that I had in a corporate job. And he was teaching us how to sell, but he just had an incredible way to get into our heads, respectfully and politely, and draw out of us what he needed us to do in order to be successful. Time management, sales execution, right? All of these things. But when I got into sales for myself, though I was trying to follow in his footsteps in a sense of like, I want to go do what he does. I took that in kind of a misguided and cocky way to mean I'm really good at sales. I'm going to go teach people how to sell.
Okay.
And so I'm going to go train, I'm going to coach, consult, even though I didn't really know what all of that meant at that time. That was the intention, was I'm good at something. I'm going to go teach other people how to be good at it. And so that was a lot of the system and process, practice and execution, the sales system, the sales methodology. And those things are all incredibly, incredibly important. What I did not understand then, and I think it just took a lot of experience, both professionally for my own self, as well as the clients I was working with, and then experientially through life and just seeing the ebb and flow of life in general, I really began to understand that sales is, I don't want to take away from how important process and execution is, but that is a fraction of a percent of what I do to help people be successful as it relates to generating revenue or achieving a goal or whatever else. I started to learn that human behavior and psychology, and really rooted in how we see ourselves and who we really are, that is what drives us to be able to execute, to achieve, to be successful. And so it was probably not until 2018 or 2019 that I started to deeply study that side of the world, psychology. And
were there certain books you read or content that you consumed that educated you on that?
You know, there was nothing profound or specific, but what I did find really, really interesting was years prior, I'd read How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie, and going back and reading a book like that, and it was like, oh, this isn't about the practice as much as it's about the relationality, right? Of me to you. That's how I influence and build relationship. That's how I become successful. And so it was things like that. It was keying in on a lot of older stuff. I talk about Covey all the time, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, one of the best books that's ever been written, I believe, anywhere. And so it was just things like that were influencing my ability to see things differently. And then Mindset by Carol Dweck, took off. Grit by Angela Duckworth took off just around that time. I think that was like 18 or 19. And so then that was more of a dive into why we are doing the things that we are doing. And so I just started to just gain more interest in that. And the more that I studied myself and other people, the more I began to realize that we were holding ourselves back. And so all that to say, my coaching today is about seeing inside of other people what they can't see inside of themselves, bringing those things to the surface, and then helping them leverage those tools to go get whatever they want.
No, it's awesome, man. And I've been an informal student of human nature, I feel like, where I've not necessarily, it wasn't through books, it's just through observation. I've been grateful to have very good mentors in sales that didn't necessarily sit me down and say, hey, Spencer, here's how you do this and this and this. But I got to observe them in the field being excellent and sort of, I would say, embodied some of the traits and characteristics. But I think just in general, being very interested in human beings.
Yeah.
Just to a level where I think, I've never had my emotional quotient tested, but I feel like it's pretty strong.
Yeah.
Because I just generally deeply want to listen to somebody and understand them and read them almost.
Yeah.
Not as a judgmental thing, but it's like connecting with that human being. So I like that that's what, it's no surprise to me that when you started taking that focus, your business obviously accelerated as well. Pareto Health is the manager of the largest employee benefits group captive in the United States. And it's also now the main sponsor of the Self-Funded with Spencer podcast. I chose to partner with Pareto Health for three main reasons. Number one, their dedication to improving the world of health benefits. Number two, their mission to reduce volatility and to make self-funding simple for mid-sized employers. And number three, the strength and scale of their program. With over 2,300 member groups and more than $1 billion of stop-loss premium under management, Pareto Health is the most robust solution of its kind in the country, period. Stay tuned for more information because I'm sure I'll be featuring them on an episode of the podcast very soon. Visit Pareto Health at paretohealth.com or follow them on LinkedIn to stay up to date on the latest news and developments.
Yeah, it changed a lot. I mean, at the surface, it grew. I was able to charge a lot more. But I just started to see a different result. I didn't start to necessarily see better results because I was able to help people before achieve goals and make more money or whatever. But now I was doing it in a way that was fulfilling to them. Because once somebody starts to see themselves for who they really are, and then they recognize that that person is who's achieving all those things, their whole world changes. And so now I'm practically successful, but I'm also personally fulfilled. And then that bleeds into every other area of life. I mean, so many of my clients, they engage with me because they have a professional challenge or a professional goal. But why they stay with me is because their life changes. And we're talking about how they are as a husband or a mom or a parent or a child. And so it bleeds into all these other areas. And so that's what just so shaped and changed my business.
Well, that's what you're describing is you help them self-actualize. Right?
Yeah.
And there's a point, I'm at 40, I feel like I'm starting to actually become who I wanted to be, but feel like there's this is who I am simultaneously. It's like there's an act of becoming, but you're also rediscovering yourself at the same time where you start to feel like, this is me.
Yep.
And it took a while to get here. You mentioned some experiential moments. There's wisdom that's gained, life experience that's gained. There's conversations, relationships, all of those. But I do think sometimes it literally also just takes time.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I actually think it takes far more time than we give it credit for, which is why we rush to try and do things to make us successful or happy more quickly. Those things fail us. And so it's just extending that time out even farther.
Yeah. Well, I want to get into the book. We've been talking about 10 minutes or so, and I really want to make sure we cover this because this is a big deal for you. I think it's a big deal for you personally, but also for your business.
Yeah.
But I know books don't just happen overnight, so I want to ask you about the process, the origins of it, because I'm sure this was a years-long endeavor to get close to a release. So tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah. So the process went something to this degree. So almost everybody knows at this point, right? October of 2017, Route 91. I am the victim of the mass shooting in Vegas. And so within a month, I had people that were saying to me, dude, you need to write a book. You need to write a book. Like that experience was so crazy. And my response to every single person that was, there is no way in hell I am going to find any level of success on the backs of our friend that was killed or anybody else that died or experienced some kind of trauma. I just couldn't do it. And so I just let it go for a year. And then about a year later, 2018, again, people started kind of pushing, you need to write a book, you need to write a book. And I had a pretty colorful backstory of my whole life, which I'll share a little bit about. And so they knew some other things. And so again, write a book. And I'm like, no. So then 2020, I gave it a run myself. I'm like, okay, I'm just going to start writing and see what happens. I got about 15,000 words in and failed. Okay. I just didn't know where to go and what to do from that point. So I stopped again. And then 2020, at the end of 2020, turning into 21, I started asking around, who could help me write a book? Do I hire a book coach? Who does this? How do they do this? The whole of 2021, I went on that search, found some very bad people to, to try and pitch. And then I ended up engaging at the beginning of 2022 with a company called Scribe Media.
Okay.
They were a referral off of LinkedIn. Somebody randomly popped into my feed and said, you need to go check out them. They've got this incredible program. Scribe's claim to fame by accident was they were the publisher on Goggins'
oh, really?
Yeah, Can't Hurt Me. And then his Never Finished, they did as well. He was nobody then, and so they were just helping a nobody write a book. They've done plenty since then. Anyway, so I engaged with them. I flew to Austin, Texas in April of 2022 and went through a 3-day author workshop with 40 other aspiring authors. Their program was so tight, so incredibly thought out and executed on, I was just blown away. And that's what set into motion. They gave us the framework for how to process your ideas. But when I went to the workshop, I had the intention of writing what they call a knowledge share book, which is, here's the 7 ways to be successful in life, right? Whatever, anybody's version of that. So I wrote 5 chapters over the next 3 months of that book with their guidance, their support. I have coaches that are helping me, and I hit a wall.
Okay.
And I was like, what the hell is going on here? I'm spending all this money, all this time. And so I'm like, I can't write this book. I'm not feeling it. That's not what people care about. When people engage with me, the thing that sets them back or helps them to lean in is my story. Life I've experienced and whatever. I'm like, I have to write that. But I'm a nobody. And so who really gives a shit about Ryan Miller's memoir, right? And so I wrestled with that for like a month.
Okay.
And finally I reached back out to Scribe, to one of the coaches, and I said, I just need to get on a call. I need to talk through this. And by the end of that call, I was absolutely convicted that I needed to write my memoir. And so I had to start all over again. Framework of ideas, stories, but they gave such a great format and structure to start writing. And so I'm still, as it sits right now, just about done with what will be my 4th round of edits. But it was incredibly successful from the standpoint that, so on the team right now at Scribe, just for me, has been 2 coaches, a lead editor, a project manager, 2 additional editors on the team. I'm assigned a director of marketing, a cover designer, a layout team. It's incredible what they've done. And this will all be executed for less than $40,000. And that's a lot of money, clearly. But what they're doing and what they will help me to produce is unreal. And on top of that, how they're going to help me to market the book, not the cheesy, like, we'll get an Amazon bestseller because it's pretty easy to do, but the way that they're going to get to reach the real audience is just incredible. So they have a really good formula and format.
That's amazing, right? And I appreciate you sharing some of the economics of it and I would say the precursor to the actual finished product, right? People don't understand how much actually goes into that. Not just your time, the number of revisions, the 5 chapters and scrap it, right? I think what you're uncovering is what is ultimately your voice over the course of time. And if you either lose passion for the idea or you hit a brick wall, that's probably because that wasn't the thing you should be writing about. How hard was it, though, for you to abandon that month's worth of work in those 5 chapters? Or did you, after that one call, were you convinced that?
It was super frustrating because it put me back almost 4 months.
Okay.
And my goal was to publish March 28th, 2023, which was my 45th birthday. And I knew that was smoked because I was so far behind. But they coached me through, like, it's okay. Your book will be ready when it's ready. And I was like, no, I'm going to achieve a goal. And, you know, so, but I eventually got to the place where I'm okay with it. And I will go back and write that book later, which now I have maybe at least some bones for. But it was helpful because it taught me that though I'm not a writer, that I could write.
Yeah.
You know, I didn't hire a ghostwriter. I literally wrote every single word myself.
That's amazing. Does it have a targeted release date yet, or is it too early to?
No, so we're targeting the end of July, early August right now is what it looks to be. So
so what happens from the point of I've finished a book to I've got an impending tentative release date? What are the finishing touches being put on a book right now? PlanSight is a complete game changer in the world of insurance brokering. As a broker, you know how time-consuming and error-prone the traditional RFP process can be. But what if I told you there's a better way? PlanSight is the only end-to-end RFP solution on the market made specifically for benefits agencies. It's like having a superpower that gets you an average of 8 to 10 hours back per employer renewal per year. And the best part? PlanSight supports all carriers, all funding types, and all group sizes for over 20 different benefits. If you're ready to make your RFP process faster, more efficient, and more profitable, it's time to call PlanSight. Visit plansight.com now to book a free demo and discover the future of insurance renewals.
So after we go through this last round of edits, which were just some minor changes this time around, so we just had a cover design approved. So that's done.
You shared with me the cover. It's dope.
Yeah,
too.
I'm so stoked, which
is
it's so weird because it's like I'm on the cover. And again, it kind of feels like self-serving, but at the same time, it communicates me.
Yeah.
So that, then they will go through and do a full line edit. Word for word, grammar, punctuation to try and get everything right. I'm sure there'll be something missed, but they'll go through that whole process, and then they start pre-marketing. So 3 months out of release, they start to reach out to PR, to podcast hosts, to other media resources to find out where we can start to promote once it goes live.
Okay.
That's their team. And then on top of that, my team, which is Shannon, who's incredible in so many ways, she's already started to pre-seed a lot of speaking opportunities around the book. So I've started to write a keynote for the book. I'm actually going to be delivering it kind of as a test run middle of May to a small audience. And so that's happening. So there's a lot of work that's happening all at once. And then literally the day it goes live, we'll do like a week up to, even so this, and I'll share it again later, but people can go to woundsbook.com and they can sign up to be a part of the just support team interest list to, we'll send them some gifts as the result of supporting, but to promote and things like that. So we'll do that leading up to it. And then once it goes live, then
well, I'm glad you said the name of the book. I don't even think we have said that yet. We've talked about it. So Wounds is the name of the book, right? So I want to hear in your own words, really, truly, what is this book about for you? Yeah.
So again, Route 91 happens. A lot of life changes. I resign my job, go back into coaching in mid 2018. Things are going amazingly well. Financially, my business blew up so quickly at the end of 2018. It was incredible. The most money I'd ever made in my life. 2019, April of 2019, my largest client, we were having a few just weird communication issues. And so I felt like there was a possibility that I was going to get fired from a 5-figure a month contract, a very, very healthy 5-figure a month contract. And I went into the office one day and there was just other things going on in life, nothing crazy, but just all these little things. And I had an anxiety attack. And I'd never had one before, and I didn't even know what that was. And I found myself in the corner of my office, curled up in a ball, and I couldn't function.
You didn't know where it came from, though?
I had no idea, other than the fact that I was fearful of losing revenue. And I called my wife, and I'm like, Michelle, I said, I don't know what's going on. I said, I'm crying. I'm curled up in a ball. I got to get on a call soon. I just need you to pray for me. So I got through that and processed that. Another year goes by, but again, these pivotal events are happening. And so then what I finally started to realize when working with a consultant on another project I was doing, nothing related to the book, was that I had all these unhealed wounds in my life. my parents' divorce. Very few people know. I dated a girl that got pregnant by another guy and supported that child for over 2 years, even after I broke up with the girl, and then was one day just ripped from me and completely from my life. Gambling, alcohol abuse, drugs, like all these things. And it was like, all of these were just compounding on top of each other. And they were creating a version of me that I didn't love. And even after coming to faith and so much of that being redeemed and like almost screwing up my marriage and that getting back together, like there were still these things that like I couldn't figure out what was going on.
Yeah.
So somebody said, you've just moved past all these experiences and you haven't really healed from them and learned from them.
Right.
And I was like, oh shit, you're right.
Yeah.
And so I went on this process of self-discovery all over again in 2020. And out came again this idea that really every single thing that I had done wrong in my life was not the fault of, but the result of my parents' divorce.
Okay.
Because my parents divorced when I was 6. My dad left. Well, to a 6-year-old, why did my dad leave? What was wrong with me? What did I do? Why did he not love me? Did he not care for me? And he was still present. Like we saw him on every other weekend. But that was the beginning of this fight to be accepted. And so then acceptance led to gambling in circles that I had no business being in and spending too much money, or getting into fights in crowds that I should have never been a part of, or sleeping around before I got married because that was the cool thing to do, to just notch my way to, to be looked up to by other people. So I just started to unpack each of these things, and little by little, just this story started to come out that was like, man, that's exactly what I'm coaching when I'm coaching other people. It's not, again, like we talked about this offline, it's not their inability to execute on a process. There's something inside of them that is broken.
Sure.
And if we don't heal that, we will never become who we were created to be. On top of that, and again, this is where my faith comes into play, the Bible says that all suffering is ultimately has purpose and intention. So there's this key verse in the book of Genesis where if you know anything about Old Testament history, it's a story of Joseph. Joseph is sold into slavery by his own family. And at the very end, he is in this high place in the kingdom, right underneath the king, and he meets his brothers again. And his brothers are so afraid because now he's in this position of power, and they're going to destroy him. And they're apologizing to him, they're weeping with him, they're hugging him. And it's just this amazing, beautiful sentence. And Joseph says, what man meant for evil, God meant for good. And it was so telling. It was like, he was sold into slavery, basically to be killed. They didn't care about him at all. And yet he was elevated to this place of power with all these riches and all this opportunity. And on top of that, when he had the ability to strike his family back down for everything that they did to him, instead, he blessed them immensely in the midst of a famine and gave them more than they could ever possibly need.
Right.
That was like, God didn't orchestrate evil, but he used the evil in this world to do something good with it. Everything that ever happened to me that was bad, whether I did it or somebody else did it to me, has the opportunity to shape me for good.
Sure.
And so that's this idea of unlocking greatness. It's in you, but there's something holding you back. And it's okay to say that you're broken or you're screwed up or you don't want to deal with it. But if you truly want what's been made available to you when God created you, you're going to have to address it and figure out how to learn and grow from it.
Well, so let me ask you this as somebody who studies people, and it obviously helps people uncover these things. And then I don't want to say you're not on the job of fixing them.
No.
But you're in helping them identify them, understand why they behave the way they do, and perhaps guide them into a better choice of behavior. But why do you think people, I want you just to speculate, why do you think people do the things in relation to trauma that we do. Like, for instance, you go gambling because you think it's a misguided way to heal a problem or heal a wound, right? Or some people will self-medicate through alcohol.
Yeah.
Why do you think we do those things versus look at the actual problem and recognize it and try to solve it?
So I think there's a couple of reasons. One, I shared this at the very beginning of the book. So probably like me, you, when you were a little boy, even though your parents loved you, cared for you, didn't want to see you hurt, when you fell off your bike, the instantaneous response was, Spencer, get up, dust yourself off, get on the bike and keep going.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of good in that, right? I don't want to like overdo this little nick on your knee or something like that. We don't want to turn our kids into babies forever, you know, whatever.
Yeah.
And there's wisdom in that. But we take that mentality, and in different ways, men and women, but I'll just use men as an example, and we just compound that for the rest of our lives. We are not conditioned culturally to show emotion. We're not conditioned to express fear. We're not conditioned to deal with the vulnerability that lives inside of us. And we all, like, we're doing this right now. We know that. We know that consciously. We shake our heads and do that. But yet, how do you deal with it? Are you willing to sit here right now and just expose yourself to everything terrible that you've done and you're ashamed of? No. That's so scary.
Yeah.
And part of it is you don't want other people to see you for who you really are. But I think there's a huge part of it is we don't want to see ourselves for who we really are because we're afraid of who those people are.
Sure, yeah.
It's easier to just put something else on. And so then to the self-medication, part of it is making the pain go away. But the other part of it is creating a persona that doesn't exist, that looks more like what's accepted in society today.
Yeah.
Because drinking alcohol is not bad. But when I do it to the point that I'm blacking out, I know I shouldn't do that, but other people are doing that, and that's fun. And so I'm just going to do like they do because then I'm accepted like they are. So these things just continue to compound over time.
Well, and so one of the things that you do, Ryan, though, with that is obviously you're trying to coach people into building businesses better, right? Or discovering themselves so that they're the most successful version of themselves, whether that's in their personal relationships or their businesses. So you have an intentionality, right, of how we redirect. It's not just you're sitting on a therapist's couch over the course of the year and talking for a week, which I'm not diminishing that as a mechanism, but that's a totally different approach to solving a problem. You want to help people uncover these things, maybe perhaps discover why they have some behaviors that are impeding their progress, get that out of the way, and get them off and running, right? So talk to me how you would go through that process with somebody.
ClaimDoc is a medical claim auditing and member advocacy company. We provide fiduciary services to employer-sponsored benefit plans, and allowing them to create an environment where we ensure that the benefit plans are being charged in a fair and reasonable basis.
My business is basically people, and it become a real simple transition. We thought it was going to be far more complex. I've saved, we'll say, hundreds of thousands of dollars. I could not say enough about ClaimDoc.
Yeah. So first of all, it's a long investment or a big investment into just building a relationship. Because I think one of the things that I even do sometimes irresponsibly is just saying to you, dude, get over yourself. Let's address them and move on. That's just unfair. You spent 40 years of your life covering those things up for one reason or another. So you got to be empathetic to that, which is really hard to do. So that's a lot of it, is building that rapport, building into them, investing into them the best I can without addressing the issues or just slowly beginning to address them. So that's a part of it. Then through writing the book, and this was actually a big help of one of my editors helping me to actually create a framework out of this. But in the book, people will see that at the end of every chapter, there's something that we created called the wound analysis framework. And so it's this idea that basically name it, claim it, and then grow from it. And so it's, what was the actual wound? What happened? And so in the instance of, again, my wound of abandonment, it was my dad left.
Okay.
Right? That's simple, but I got to own it. And so that's naming it. Then analyzing it in the moment is, how did that impact me? Okay. How did that make me feel as best as I can remember at 6? What did that do to me? What kind of perception did that give me of myself and of other people and even of my dad? And then starting to analyze over time how, and you're going to have to do this with somebody else that understands this because it's hard for us to do this for ourselves, but how did that then start to impact other decisions I made, behaviors that I engaged in, and things like that along the way? So that's the analyzation. And then the last component to that is then unlocking your greatness.
Okay.
How does this help me to become a better person? Sometimes it's just I endured hell. And that demonstrates my grit, my tenacity, and my character. Other times, it's much deeper. And so in the instance, again, of like my poor dad that now I just pick on so much, and I don't mean to because we have an incredible relationship after all these years. I love him to death. He's one of my best friends in the world. But I started to realize that like I was imposing things onto somebody that was incapable of being everything that I was trying to get him to be.
Yeah.
Not at 6, but at 18, when I realized all that had happened to me earlier, then I started to impose all these things on him. Not only that, so that was greatness in terms of how I related to other people, but then on top of that, that also then started to shape who I wanted to be as a father. Because I mean, my oldest daughter's 21. The first 6.5 years of her life, I wasn't great all the time as a father, taking all responsibility. But even now, I'm still learning and growing, and so I'm trying to understand, what did I learn from that for myself in order to be better at what I'm doing?
Yeah, that's what's that notion? The chains we break don't get passed on to our children. You ever heard that?
Yep.
Yeah, that's something that I reflect upon a lot, right? And there's nothing that you would have ever looked at my life and go, oh, well, that event happened, or that, oh, mom or dad left, or somebody died. It wasn't anything like that. But you look at what was there a behavior that I didn't like, that I observed, that I was a victim of, right? Arguments or yelling or financial stress or any of those things that I think the majority of people can relate to in one way or another. But it's like, how do you then in turn embody those and end up just repeating the cycle as the parent now? And I think, what do they say? Most people that are victims of trauma, one way that they overcome that is take the status of the perpetrator then and victimize somebody else to get their power back, which is a really unhealthy way to go about it. But just recognizing that happened, okay, could you break the pattern? That way it doesn't happen to your kin, right?
Well, and then, so to make this very practical for people, knowing your audience that are listening to this, like think about it this simply. It's very complex, but this simply is there is something that's been done to you or by you that has created a distorted view of who you are to make you feel less than, not good enough, right? All that idea, which then creates a sense of fear. It creates a sense of like a lack of desire to really push yourself too far. So fast forward all the way to now, we're all grown up and we're out in the business world and we need to put ourselves out there. Are you going to put your real self out there? Or are you going to put the person out there that everybody else is in order to be accepted?
Right.
Likely, you're going to do the latter.
Right.
Well, what does that do? That hinders your ability to uniquely identify yourself in a market. And so therefore, the customers that you're trying to pursue don't see you as any different than anybody else. I mean, this is like personal branding 101, but it's not rooted in redo your style. It's not even really rooted in tell your story really well. It's go figure out who you really are and figure out how to communicate that to the world.
Well, and that's that self-discovery, whether you're discovering your voice, I would say, like on stage, or what you're talking about is discovering yourself, that persona. It's not an additive process where you're bolting things on to discover yourself. I've always thought of it as like sort of the facade that you chip away, or what you take away from a joke or a book, what you edit is actually makes it better. Perhaps you've layered on some things that aren't really yourself. You need to remove those so that people actually get to see you. And I think that's kind of the process that you're describing. Ryan, I know we've gone a little bit over, and I don't mean over like we have some sort of time limit, but I do want to sort of close the loop on what you see this book doing for you personally, as well as serving your business. But I think what your big picture is what this could do for other people. So talk to me about the big picture of writing that book.
Yeah. So it sounds so valiant to say I want to change the world, right? But the reality is, like, I do hope and pray that this puts me on stages to tell this story all over the world. I believe it's a story that needs to be told. It's very relatable because there's just so many things that people don't expect somebody like me to have gone through, that I have gone through. So I hope that paid speaking gigs and workshops around. We're building out a workshop for this workbook. So we see a lot of opportunity from a business perspective to really grow this, which I would be super excited for. But as I think about particularly the first 28 years of my life before I came to faith, I lived a miserable life and nobody would have known it because I was always trying to be something that I wasn't. Mm-hmm. There is no worse position in life to be than living as somebody other than yourself. Now, I'm not proud of, like, I'm not great at everything. I've got a lot of room to, I'm not saying I'm so great right now that like this, I've arrived, but it's once you begin to discover who you are, everything changes. Your ability to succeed, your perception of yourself, your relationships. And so my hope and prayer is that by me going first in a way to the community that I do have some influence or connection to, but then beyond that, and start to bear some pretty difficult things. I'm pretty public, but there's still some things in there that people are going to read and be like, wow, I really hope that people start to see that it's okay to open up.
Yeah.
Then that there's benefit to addressing it. And then whether that's engaging with me or somebody else that can help them step through the process, because most people aren't going to read this book and be like, my life is such a mess. I'm so broken. This is going to be it for me. It's for most people, this is going to be the 1% that takes them from good to great. Mm-hmm. It's just that little tweak that they're going to make that takes them from, I'm in the 90th percentile in my industry selling or running a business to I'm in the 99th percentile. Right. So I believe that those stories are out there in spades, and I'm like praying almost daily that that's the impact that it has.
I don't even hope that's the case. I actually have confidence that will be the case for you. But what I'll say is the one thing that I've discovered is everybody is interesting if you just know how to ask the right questions and learn to talk to them. And what I hope is that you will help other people discover that, hey, I actually have something of value, even if they don't think they do. And they be confident going into that and being able to share that with the world. I do genuinely believe that everybody has something to give. So my hope is that you will unlock that for people, and I do think that will happen. So Ryan, appreciate you coming on the podcast again. I'm happy to highlight your story in your book. We're going to obviously turn the couch around and do some other cool content to finish off this mastermind. But again, one thing I do want to say is thank you for helping pull this all together as well, man. I owe you one big time. For sure.
No, it's been great, man. And I mean, you've been so gracious. I think what's wonderful is like kind of accidentally we built such a great friendship, and I consider you to be such a wonderful friend, even though we don't see each other all the time, obviously live states away. And so I just love your graciousness and your generosity and what you're trying to do to help people tell their stories in so many ways. And so it's exciting for me to be sitting here seeing you growing in that area. And I can't wait to help you promote that, because I just think that there's a lot there for people.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
All right, man. Good to talk to you, Ryan.
You too.
Take care.